On 17 September 1944, dawn broke over England. Major General Stanisław Sosabowski sat alone, hands folded, eyes fixed on maps. He had fought for Poland, lost his homeland, and carried exile like shrapnel tonight. Across Europe, Allied armies surged forward, chasing a swift end. Operation Market Garden promised speed, surprise, and a bridge too far. Sosabowski warned commanders. The drop zones were wrong. The enemy was waiting. British General Frederick Browning listened politely, smiled thinly, and dismissed his doubts. In briefing rooms and long corridors, reputations were weighed, loyalties quietly tested. As aircraft engines warmed outside, Sosabowski felt history tightening against his chest. He thought of Arnhem, its river bends, its narrow streets. Intelligence reports were thin, optimism was loud, schedules unforgiving. Sosabowski requested changes, tighter drops, stronger armor support. The room cooled slightly, eyes drifted away, pens paused. Victory fever pressed hard, patience thinned fast, caution felt inconvenient. Outside, paratroopers laughed nervously, smoking before the flight. Inside, a general from Poland stood against the tide. He knew the cost of error, in blood and in blame. When the meeting adjourned, the plan moved forward, and dissent stayed behind. That night, Sosabowski wrote notes, careful and restrained. He addressed no one directly, respected the chain, trusted time. History, however, was already rolling toward Arnhem. The price would come later, quietly at first, then all at once. For now, engines roared and orders stood. On 18 September 1944, the skies over Holland opened with thunder. Thousands of parachutes bloomed white, drifting toward drop zones far too exposed. Sosabowski watched reports arrive. Slow, fragmented, his jaw tightening with every word. Radio silence spread quickly, and confusion followed close behind. German armor, long dismissed, moved decisively toward the Arnhem bridges. British airborne units landed scattered, fighting immediately, fighting desperately for survival. Sosabowski pressed again, urging reinforcements, pleading for urgency. Headquarters replied cautiously, tone clipped, confidence still firmly intact. Maps once clean now bled arrows and crossed out assumptions. Along the lower Rhine, gunfire echoed through villages and fields. Civilians hid in cellars, counting hours, praying silently. At Nijmegen, delays mounted. Every passing minute favored the defenders. Sosabowski saw the pattern, the collapse forming piece by piece. He argued the timing was broken, weather worsening, margins gone. Staff officers shifted uneasily, loyalty wrestling with evidence. The plan required perfection. Reality delivered friction. British commanders blamed terrain, weather, and bad luck. Sosabowski named the causes plainly: distance, intelligence failures, overconfidence. His words landed hard in rooms craving reassurance. Polish paratroopers prepared to jump, spirits steady, faces tense. They trusted their general, trusted his warnings, trusted fate itself. When they finally dropped, days late, resistance was fierce, unrelenting. Sosabowski felt vindication without relief. Truth offered no comfort. The battle was turning grim, quietly, irreversibly, and somewhere between courage and denial, blame began to form. On 20 September 1944, rain swept across the Rhine. Sosabowski landed near Driel, boots sinking in mud, weapons already firing. German resistance was organized, aggressive, and seemingly everywhere at once. The Polish brigade advanced under relentless fire, crossing fields littered with wreckage. Across the river, British troops were trapped at Arnhem, starving and pinned down. Sosabowski pushed for boats, any boats, to get men across the water. Command delays multiplied problems. Radios failed and orders blurred. Makeshift ferries arrived late under mortar fire, half destroyed. Polish soldiers rowed anyway, knowing many would not return. Sosabowski watched men die, each minute stolen by hesitation. He reported honestly, crossings were impossible, losses unsustainable. At higher headquarters, frustration sharpened, patience vanished. British officers sought explanations, not responsibility. The word failure hovered heavily, unspoken yet unmistakable. Sosabowski refused soft language, refused comforting lies. He stated plainly that Arnhem could not be held, that evacuation was necessary. That assessment struck pride more than it did enemy fire. In private conversations, his name shifted tone, from ally to problem. Courage was applauded publicly, questioned privately. As Operation Market Garden unraveled fully, reputations trembled. The withdrawal began quietly, under the cover of darkness. Wounded men were carried back across mud and fear. Sosabowski remained forward, ensuring no one was abandoned. When the guns finally faded, silence replaced ambition. The battle was over, but consequences were only beginning. On 21 September 1944, the reckoning began. In Allied headquarters, tempers flared behind closed doors, voices low, sharp. Operation Market Garden lay broken, its promises exposed in stark detail. Senior commanders searched for explanations that spared reputations, avoiding accountability. Sosabowski submitted reports, factual, blunt, and precise. He documented delays, flawed intelligence, and impossible crossings without hesitation. Those pages circulated quietly, making readers uncomfortable. British command bristled at the tone, mistaking clarity for insolence. General Browning felt challenged. His judgment questioned openly. What had been warnings now sounded like accusations. In meetings, Sosabowski was thanked, then quietly sidelined. Praise thinned, smiles cooled, invitations vanished. Whispers followed him, labeled difficult, uncooperative, political. No one mentioned his predictions, now painfully proven right. Instead, attention shifted toward performance, not planning. Polish troops were praised for bravery, their general less so. Sosabowski sensed the shift, the ground moving beneath him. Allies needed unity, not reminders of failure. Truth became inconvenient and therefore suspect. Behind the scenes, recommendations were carefully couched in diplomatic language. Leadership, it was said, required harmony. Sosabowski represented friction, not compliance. His future began narrowing, not by courts, but by silence. The battle had ended weeks ago, but judgment arrived slowly. And in war, being right could be unforgivable. On 24 September 1944, orders arrived quietly. Sosabowski was summoned, tone formal, words carefully measured. The meeting was brief, courteous, and final. He was relieved of command, without ceremony, without debate. No charges were read aloud, no defense permitted. Market Garden needed closure, not controversy. British leadership framed the decision as organizational necessity, but behind the phrasing, blame had already found a home. Sosabowski listened calmly, face controlled, shoulders steady. Years of exile had taught him restraint and patience. Outside, Polish soldiers waited anxiously, sensing a loss they could not yet name. They had followed him through fire, through impossible orders. Now their commander was removed as if inconvenient. Sosabowski addressed his men, voice steady, words spare. He praised their courage, accepted responsibility, and protected their honor. That loyalty cut deeper than any reprimand. In Allied circles, the narrative hardened quickly. Market Garden had failed due to execution, not conception. A stubborn Polish general fit the story neatly. Sosabowski returned to obscurity, medals absent, reputation bruised. History moved on fast, leaving footnotes behind. Yet some officers remembered his maps, his warnings. They spoke softly, years later, over drinks. Truth survived quietly, waiting for distance, and the price of honesty had been paid. On 6 October 1944, the war pressed on relentlessly. Sosabowski was quietly reassigned, far from headlines, far from the bridges he had warned about. No farewell marked the change, no ceremony softened it. Across Europe, new offensives demanded attention and demanded silence. Market Garden became a lesson, rarely examined aloud. Sosabowski wrote letters to no one in particular, measured and calm. He avoided bitterness, though injustice lingered heavily in every line. Polish exile units felt the loss. Morale subtly shaken. They fought on anyway because war allowed no pause. British reports solidified carefully rehearsed versions, reputationally safe. Sosabowski appeared difficult, inflexible, unaligned. No mention was made of foresight, accuracy, or his courage to dissent. In private archives, his assessments sat unread, forgotten on dusty shelves. Paper preserved truth while people buried it. As Arnhem faded from headlines, other disasters took focus. Yet, among airborne veterans, memories stayed sharp. They recalled ignored warnings, scattered briefings, and impossible distances. Sosabowski lived modestly, focused on duty, not recognition. He believed that history would correct itself eventually. War, however, rarely rewarded patience. The silence around his name grew heavier with time. Victory approached in Europe, but vindication did not. The bridges were repaired, careers recovered, only his reputation remained unresolved. On 8 May 1945, Europe finally exhaled. Victory filled the streets, banners, cheers, and exhausted smiles everywhere. Sosabowski stood apart, watching celebrations from a distance. Poland was liberated, yet not truly free. Borders had been redrawn without consent. For him, the war ended without a homecoming. British commendations flowed generously, names read aloud. His was not among them. His absence quietly noted. Official histories published early framed Market Garden carefully. Errors were abstract, responsibility diffuse, blame politely diffused. Sosabowski appeared briefly, stripped of context, flattened in narrative. Years passed, life narrowed, work found where possible. He drove trucks, worked factories, wore anonymity like armor. A general reduced by politics, not by defeat. Former soldiers wrote letters expressing loyalty and gratitude. Those letters remained private, powerless against the official story. Public memory favors victory, not warnings ignored. Sosabowski aged, health weakening, pride intact. He never recanted, never apologized. Silence became his shield. Dignity his protest. Across Britain, Arnhem became legend. Heroism was celebrated. Planning less questioned. Only historians began revisiting documents slowly. Footnotes grew heavier. Margins whispered doubt. Truth stirred faintly, but too late for him. On 25 February 1967, winter hung low over London. Sosabowski, now frail, walked carefully, cane tapping softly on the pavement. The city moved fast around him, unaware that history itself was passing by. He followed the news quietly, wars ending, new conflicts beginning. Market Garden resurfaced occasionally, documentaries, anniversaries, speeches. Each time, his name appeared briefly, unresolved, lingering in shadows. Former British officers defended their decisions, tone firm, rehearsed. Documents were declassified slowly, revealing uncomfortable truths. Maps confirmed distances. Reports confirmed warnings. Historians began asking questions, cautiously at first. Why were drop zones so distant? Why was armor dismissed? Why was dissent treated as disloyalty? Sosabowski watched this shift without triumph, without joy. Vindication delayed decades loses much of its warmth. In Poland, under communism, his story remained inconvenient. Exile followed him even in memory. Friends dwindled. Conversations grew shorter. He spoke rarely of Arnhem, never bitterly, never dramatically. When asked, he answered plainly, facts only. That restraint confused interviewers seeking drama. Truth, he believed, required no performance. On his desk, old letters remained neatly stacked. They proved loyalty, if not justice. Time pressed forward, carrying correction slowly, steadily. And history was almost ready. On 18 August 1967, the silence ended. Stanisław Sosabowski died quietly, far from Arnhem, far from the bridges he had warned about. No state funeral marked his passing. No headlines followed. Obituaries were brief, cautious, incomplete. A general who had spoken the truth exited the world without applause. Years later, pressure mounted. Historians grew bolder. Veterans spoke openly, freed by the passage of time. British archives revealed memos, tone defensive, selective. Market Garden was re-examined, bridge by bridge. Sosabowski's warnings appeared again, painfully accurate. Public opinion shifted slowly, reluctantly. Mistakes once blurred gained definition. The story no longer fit simple heroism. In the Netherlands, remembrance took deeper shape. Arnhem remembered the Polish sacrifices and quietly honored them. Statues, plaques, ceremonies arrived late, but they arrived. British officials reconsidered past judgments. Apologies softened language and corrected records. In 2000, his brigade finally received overdue recognition. Decades late, but real. For Sosabowski, redemption came posthumously. History finally caught up, yet no correction could return the years lost. Truth had waited patiently, longer than he lived, and Market Garden gained its missing voice. On 31 May 2006, a circle finally closed. In Driel, Dutch flags and Polish colors hung side by side. The Netherlands formally honored Stanisław Sosabowski, a military decoration awarded posthumously. corrected history at last. Veterans stood silently, some in tears, remembering courage long overlooked. The River Rhine flowed calmly, indifferent to the passage of decades. Speeches acknowledged past mistakes, carefully, respectfully, with honesty. Market Garden was spoken of openly, with truths long ignored. Sosabowski was named not as an obstacle, but as a conscience, a general who had warned and had been ignored. His story reshaped the narrative, centering courage in dissent. Not courage to attack, but courage to disagree. In military academies, his case became instruction. Dissent was reframed as responsibility. Leadership without listening revealed its true cost. The Polish brigade received overdue honor, recognition delayed but real. Families reclaimed pride long deferred. History corrected itself, slowly, imperfectly, but decisively. The price, however, remained permanent. Truth had won, but late. Sosabowski never lived to see his name fully restored. Yet his integrity outlived disgrace. In the end, bridges fell, careers recovered, and wars moved on. Only his warning still stands, a reminder that being right can be dangerous and that courage is not always celebrated in its time.